It's almost like the shiny object is, oh, I built this, I can build this. And that's maybe the fun part or the exciting part. But then it's, hey, this thing needs to operate and be relied on day in, day out. And there's considerable effort in doing that. And even, I would argue, in some cases, domain expertise that's required to do that really well. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Cannizzaro, and I get the honor of hosting the second episode in our new series, Sit Down with Sunder. Sunder, for those of you who don't know, has the dual role of being our CIO and CPO, Chief Product Officer. And that is very meaningful in the context of our topic today, an age-old topic with a twist: build versus buy. And so, Sunder, as we lead into this, it's a topic that has been in the public discourse for years. What's different when we talk about build versus buy these days?
Yeah, the advancements in whether we call them vibe coding platform or AI assisted coding has come a long ways, especially in the last 12 months. It has made the question all the more relevant now than ever before. In the past, building an application still took a lot of commitment. You had to pull your talented resources and commit to a certain amount of time and money to it. Now you can practically build an application in an afternoon. Meaningful applications, functioning applications, not just prototypes or proof of concept. And that has fundamentally changed the conversation, forcing all of us to ask the question, should we build it? And it's a valid question, one that the way we ask it and the answer we come to is quite different today than it was even 12 months ago.
Well, and you bring up a very interesting point in that it is easier and faster than ever, which would tend to bias the, hey, can I just build this question in everyone's mind. That said, there's some inherent conflict in the roles that you hold as our CIO, as our CPO. So how have you resolved that internal conflict? How is it that you think about this as you're navigating these decisions on behalf of our entire organization and tech stack vis-a-vis what it is that we build into our own platform?
Yeah, it's kind of like playing chess with myself, is how I see it. Where on the one hand, to your point, the conflict as a chief product officer, of course, I want to say, no, don't build your own solution. You must use the solution someone else is focused on. We, for instance, as responsive, what we do is entirely focus on building our product, and we take input from so many customers. We learn from this collective wisdom, and you cannot replicate that level of commitment to the solution. So it does make sense for you to just subscribe. That's what I want to say as a chief product officer. But as a CIO, I must also acknowledge the reality of today, what is possible, what teams can do and build, and balance that and say where it is possible, build it.
So I'm picking up on an important word, which is the limitations of building. So maybe let's dig into that a little bit deeper, which is, when you think about the build path, you've established some areas where it is maybe good enough, but then where does that start to hit a limit where organizations should really be thinking about buying something?
As much as we say building an application has gotten so much easier, and I do stand by the statement that you can build meaningful applications in an afternoon, but what hasn't changed yet is owning the application longer term hasn't gotten easier. You still have to deploy it, maintain it. Someone needs to own it. And you have to account for security and compliance, even if it's an internal application. These things, AI hasn't changed the equation yet. So that has factored into when I built some applications, when I started building, I thought it's a great candidate. And then I got to the end of it and say, what would this look like when I hand it off to the team and say, go deploy this and own it? Like, who is going to own it? What kind of commitment do I have to make? That's the point at which I took a step back. understanding the line between getting to that creation of the software and owning the
Yeah.
software.
It's almost like the shiny object is, "Oh, I built this. I can build this." And that's maybe the fun part or the exciting part, but then it's, "Hey, this thing needs to operate and be relied on day in, day out." And there's considerable effort in doing that. And even, I would argue, in some cases, domain expertise that's required to do that really well. Because I think even as we're launching new products, we know that there's constant iteration even from what goes out the door, from all the feedback that we're getting. And that's the case internally if you build something as well. There's also considerable risk involved, risk and governance when building a solution internally. How is it that you really think about that and how to successfully navigate some of that risk in the decisions that organizations are making around build versus buy?
And that takes on different dimensions when we talk about risk and governance. If, let's say, we hand out license to one of the vibe coding platforms or coding platforms to anyone that needs it. And if we decentralize it completely, yes, it enables the teams to go build a solution. But if we don't know what kind of problems are being solved, what kind of data that application is going to handle, how security is being implemented and access control is being implemented, how it's being deployed and monitored. If we lose sight of all of those, then we are introducing a massive risk to the business. Even if it's an internal application, we may think it's a low risk application and you're deploying it internally, it's sitting inside the firewall. That doesn't take away the risks that come with an internal application that could do a lot of damage. Internal applications and access also are a vector for somebody to attack or compromise your internal systems. That's one aspect of it. The other is knowing where data lives, what is being processed, how it is being processed. Those things matter. If I think about, let's say someone is from HR department decides, hey, we need some application to build, and we're going to collect performance reviews or some information. Technically, that might be possible, but if that application starts processing confidential information, private conversations people are having with their managers or HR, then we have created a potential risk with the data exposure and PII and privacy. And so that centralized governance still matters and having that control still matters. It's not CIOs or CTOs trying to hold on to it. It's looking after the potential risk with the business that may come from different perspectives, security or compliance.
And so maybe make this real for us because everyone loves real world examples. Can you give some examples where, something is maybe a better candidate or you've seen it hit those limits from a broader system or platform that you would say this absolutely is not something that's a great candidate for build it yourself?
Yeah, I'll speak from personal experience. I'll state the obvious first. Would we attempt to rebuild a CRM solution? Probably will never attempt to do that. It just wouldn't make sense. It will be a massive distraction from what our core business is and what kind of resources it will pull away from our focus. The second are the kind of solutions that you have a problem. Nothing in the market is effectively solving it. And so there's a natural temptation to build it. One of them, I'll give a live example of what I tried to build about a month ago. We get product signals from a lot of different places, from customers, from our customer success teams, emails, conversations, phone calls. There is not an effective way for us to synthesize all of this and feed that into the product team and then tie it into a roadmap. And it is a problem. There are solutions available. None of them solve the way we need it solved for our business. So I figured, yeah, this science sounds like a problem we could solve and started building it, only come to the realization that was getting more and more complicated as I started adding layers to it. And that's what drawn that line to say, no, don't do this.
So, Sunder, you gave the example of CRM as a system that you wouldn't leave to chance, that you would not say makes a good candidate for build. And I would agree with you because the business relies on it, growth is at stake. Let's actually move to an example you and I know very well, which is our own category, strategic response management. And for those who are hearing that for the first time, the way to really think about strategic response management is a system that really allows you to harness your organizational knowledge to drive trusted winning responses. So ultimately, this is about that governed knowledge base that you can scale to address any type of response and ultimately not just to respond, but to win. So, Sunder, make this real in the context of everything we've been talking about today in how the audience out there might navigate SRM from where they're sitting.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of points in your question. You talked about winning. And if this is purely about getting facts out to an organization, to somebody, your buyer, or customer, partner, any external party, maybe you can consider building your own solution. But winning matters. It's not always about just here's your mechanical answer, boilerplate responses back to you. And that requires more than just answering questions. Even if we were to say, sure, all we need is boilerplate responses all the time, organizational facts change every single day. What was true yesterday may not be true today. That's true even in our own organization. Our employee count might have changed today because people joined this morning. Some people may have left. So those facts are always changing. And in our space, that those facts being accurate and current matters a lot. And if we state something that is outdated, was true maybe 2 weeks ago, we may create a compliance risk for the business. And that's where it becomes critical. And that's a kind of problem I won't try to solve internally. And if I were to, then I'm going to have to dedicate the resources needed to not only maintain the application, but the knowledge that sits behind it is always up to date and current. And those are probably another example of a candidate that maybe don't try to tackle.
Yeah. If I may interject, I mean, something that I've heard from our customers is that this governed knowledge base, it's essentially the system of record for your organization's expertise, for the stuff that lives in people's brains. And that's what you have to rely on when you are responding to a customer or prospect. And you don't want to leave that to
Yeah.
chance. And to your point, it's changing all the time. So on the surface, it might seem like, oh, I'm just trying to answer a question. Well, what's happening to the person who's receiving that? And it's not just in something like an RFP, it could be in an email to an executive buyer, on a phone call, it could be in all these different contexts. And it's really what are you relying on and what are your customers relying on to make those decisions so that that governance and the knowledge base can become an incredible asset when folks see it that way. But then there's more to this, right? Because you mentioned winning. It's about winning. So what else is often missed in this conversation?
Maybe there is the option in between, the build and buy. It's a more integrated, a hybrid solution, right? Most of my conversations with our customers are heading in that direction. It's not just do we subscribe, continue, build our own. It's more of how can responsive talk to other systems? How can we integrate responsive with either an enterprise AI solution that it becomes an extension? And I think this is true for not just responsive. A lot of applications now need to all live together, talk to each other more effectively, efficiently, so your teams don't have to constantly switch context from one application to another. When facts are available in responsive, and that's the most compliant response that has been managed and maintained by someone who owns those facts, then make that information available not just within responsive anywhere else. And I can again stating this about any application that is a system of record, that's a source of truth, should be accessible by other applications within the enterprise, which has always been true to an extent, but lately, especially over the last 2, 3 years, it has been incredibly relevant and a lot of a conversation around this topic.
Yeah, truly, the ecosystem matters and the ecosystem is growing, especially with agents entering the scene. We'll save that for a future conversation. So, we're talking about winning here, and winning is not just about, hey, I'm giving you a winning response. It's also where a revenue team spends its time and energy. How do you think about that in the context of a category like strategic response management? And what it really takes to do that well.
Winning proposals or RFPs is all about communicating what an organization can do for their customers. You don't need a proposal, right? They can find the information on your website. They can do their own research. Heck, today you can ask ChatGPT or Claude and tell me about what a company can do, and it will summarize it really well. But it's about what I, as a buyer, need and what problems am I trying to solve. And that requires, as a vendor, you speak to my needs and my requirements and my expectations. And that's the difference between a boilerplate proposal and a winning proposal. And that requires a certain level of intelligence that goes into it. It's not just about pulling the capabilities and summarizing it, but preparing for it, understanding the context, the buyer context, who they are, what are they trying to solve, what space are they in, and speaking their language. And that's where it goes from a simple question answering system to a winning response generating system.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's all about personalization. And at the end of the day, it's also helping organizations navigate, is this worth my time to take all of that TLC to a particular opportunity? Can we match those requirements? Is it worth it for us? And sometimes that's more than half the battle because sales wants to bid on everything or pursue every opportunity. It might not be a fit. You want to chase good revenue and revenue that's winnable revenue, and that's part of that upfront investment as well.
And making sure that we don't end up pursuing and winning the wrong opportunity and end up turning into a massive distraction down the road.
You know, you said something interesting, and it was in your example around, hey, we had all these custom requirements. And so it made us think, oh, maybe we should just build it. That's often the case where something that you buy may not have all the requirements that you have internally. So, and yet at the same time, it may be the better option to actually buy something. What advice would you have for organizations who are navigating that and how they're working with their vendors or even how they're understanding the considerations that those technology providers have in building their own roadmaps and technologies?
If it's something complex enough that trusting someone else who has built it and is building for hundreds, if not thousands of organizations, I'm going to trust them that even if they don't have that capability today, that they may get there, that we may be able to influence that roadmap. And if they hear that pain and problem from enough people that they do recognize it and solve that problem, that also is an indication it is something. If it's that complex that a vendor that specializes in a solution hasn't solved yet, maybe there's a reason for it, that if we go attempt to solve it, we might be taking on that same challenge that might be a distraction for us. It's one thing to build one or two applications for internal and support it. Now imagine if every department starts to build two applications there, three applications there, and as a CIO, if I'm ending up with 40 to 50 applications that are internally built to maintain, the compounding effect of it will be too great for us to say at some point this is a massive
Yep.
distraction for
I
us.
think you were just describing your greatest nightmare, 40 to 50 internally built solutions that maybe don't have a unifying framework or best practice. And that is a very real risk. I'm also hearing you say, and this is something I've appreciated as I've been in the seat of a buyer many times, that sometimes you may have certain demands or requirements as a customer, but your technology provider is there to say, hey, like we've heard this from a lot of people. Here's the reason why we didn't do that. I actually appreciate that when someone comes with that perspective because they've seen it a lot more than I have. And as long as that's credible and they help me understand it, and it meets most of my needs, I think that's totally fair.
One of the examples that has come up in our conversations with our customers is image generation. Being able to generate images, we see it all the time with LLMs. And we see it on the news, in the articles, and we can experiment it ourselves if we have access to Gemini, Claude, or OpenAI. And it sounds like it's something we should be able to use in RFPs or proposals. In But when we are producing a proposal, precision matters. The style and branding matters. You want to present the information exactly the same way every time. Is is the technology there yet where you can provide a prompt and create and visualize an image and produce it exactly as you want? No, it's not there yet. That's a place in which where we say we have experimented with it, we have tried it, we don't believe the technology is there, but we'll keep an eye on it. When it does evolve to a point, we will absolutely consider it. But that's an example of, if we then think, hey, maybe the vendor hasn't solved what we can, you may end up spending cycles and not come up with a solution that you may like.
Okay, so bringing it back to where we started, we've got organizations out there who are navigating build versus buy every day. What advice would you give to them as they're on this journey and considering what's better for their organization?
Maybe not an advice. Maybe I'll share what we are doing ourselves and what I am presenting to our own internal teams. Giving them, giving each of the department owners and the application owners within our organization some kind of a framework, guidance. How do you evaluate a solution, either an existing subscription or one we are considering subscribing to? How do we evaluate to see if that's a good fit for buy over build? And the criteria is business criticality. So, how critical is it to business? And for instance, payroll. It it might sound like if you check other criteria, it's something you should build. But would you ever build payroll? Probably not. It's highly integrated, complex systems, and people's paycheck depend on it. You don't want to take a chance with it. Understand the criticality of it and understand the user base. If it's a large user base across the entire organization, a lot of different teams are going to use it, probably not a good candidate. If it's a very controlled user base for a narrower use case, that might be a better fit. And also understand the complexity of the application. How much does it need to talk to other systems? The moment integration gets into the picture, it automatically, the complexity goes up. Not in the initial build, the longer term maintenance, because now you have dependency with the other applications and you have to commit talent and resources to maintain it. Looking at the compliance aspect, what kind of data is it going to handle? If it's going to handle sensitive information like PII information or customer data, for instance, maybe not a good idea because of the investment it will take. Again, I think we can define this framework in some criteria, but ultimately, one of the points you mentioned earlier is once you start building it, people get emotionally attached to it. It's like, I built this, I like it, I want to see it come to life. It's too late to ask the question at that point. If we are remaining objective, ask these questions before you start the build. And so you don't get emotionally attached to something you have built and not objectively score based on that framework. So that's how I'm approaching it. With everything I say, we could have the conversation a year from now, my answers might be entirely different. So I'm adding that disclaimer with anything I say.
Always the disclaimers with you, Sunder, but you signed up to do this on a regular basis. So maybe we will come and do this episode again a year from now and see how things have evolved. But truly, I think that's a great framework. And what I'm hearing you say is high stakes, as in the business relies on it, high complexity, high degree perhaps of customization or even high exposure from a risk compliance standpoint, generally leans more towards go with the expertise there, the domain expertise, and also how fun it is to actually maintain a system, right? And look, I'm sure there's exceptions to everything, but I think that's generally a good way to frame it up for the audience out there. With that, I think we've hit on most of the topics for today, including, build may seem great until you realize it's not, and all the things that are involved in actually maintaining a system, and also to have clear guidance for the organization as we're navigating these topics. Any final words before I let you go?
No, I just do want to make sure that it's also clear we must embrace the change, embrace the technology, and do look for opportunities to streamline and optimize if there might be solutions that are completely suboptimal today. People might be managing something in Google Sheets or Excel and have complex calculators. And those are things that we should look to optimize. It may not rise to the level of having to buy a commercial solution, and if there is suboptimal processes where teams are wasting time or potentially maintenance nightmare because no one can understand complex Excel formulas someone else built, those are places absolutely we should look for opportunities to enable our business, help our business move faster, better, and function more efficiently. So always explore the options, but be objective and prudent about when and where to build.
Excellent. Well, thank you for all of your gems of wisdom, per usual. And for everyone out there, we will be doing our third episode of Sit Down with Sunder next month. So stay tuned for more. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sunder.
Thank you.